Great. Good evening, everyone. Thank you for coming to the CPC meeting Wednesday, June 18th. Call the meeting to order at 7:03. First order of business is our public forum. And Grant, could you pull up the slides when you give us a chance?
Yep.
So for anybody that may be watching the replay, we thank you for watching the replay. We hope you come forward with projects. It's an exciting process. Once again, the applications, the goal is to have the applications and the handbook online and ready to go Monday at the latest. So if you are interested in doing an application, you have from then until September 15th. Just to get your applications. So, all right. So again, thank you everybody for coming. This is just an overview of what we're going to go through in the forum. We're going to introduce our members. We're going to do a review of the history, the budget, the summary of approved projects, some questions, and the process. So I would like to introduce our members. I am Lisa Braccio. I'm chair. I'm a representative of the planning board. Can you hit the next screen, Grant? Sorry. We also have Kristen LaVault. She's the recreation representative, and she is the vice chair, and she is online. And when I call your name as we go down, if you could just kind of put your hand up so people know. We have Grant Barrington as the representative from the Historical Commission. Brett Peters is not in attendance tonight. He's at large. We have Ellen Myra. Did I butcher your name? Okay, sorry. From the Trust Fund Committee, we have Claire Reynolds as our at-large member and Katie Berry from the Housing Authority. So we thank you and we welcome you for coming. Next screen, please. So basically what today is we're going to talk a little bit about what the Community Preservation Act is, how it applies in Southborough, and how some of the benefits that we've seen from this as well as the process. So CPA is a smart growth tool that helps communities preserve open space and historic sites, create community housing, and develop outdoor recreational facilities. CPA also helps strengthen the state and local economies by expanding housing opportunities and construction jobs for the Commonwealth's workforce, and by supporting the tourism industry through preservation of the Commonwealth's historic and natural resources. Next slide, please. So a little bit of the history of CPA. The Southborough voters passed a 1% CPA surcharge in May of 2003, and we'll get into a little bit more of what the surcharge is as we go further in. Revenue collections began in July of 2003. The Community Preservation Committee was approved and created in 2004 by town meeting. Freddie, if I say anything wrong, just jump in and correct me, please. And the first projects were approved at town meeting 2005. Next slide. So some of the duties of the CPC is to create an application, criteria, and a process for project funding and oversight, review applications and make project recommendations for town meeting, develop an annual budget, develop a CPA plan for the town of Southborough, hold an annual public forum, which we're doing tonight, and educate stakeholders about the CPA and supporting guidance. Next slide. How much does it cost me? In fiscal year 25, on the average home, it was $118.42 that was paid in to the CPA, sorry. The average single family home was assessed at $957,500. The first $100,000 is exempt, so that would bring you to $857,500. The tax rate at $13.81 per thousand makes the average tax bill $11,842, and a 1% surcharge comes off your tax bill for the average home. There are exemptions for seniors and low-income residents. See the town assessor's website. Yeah. Next slide. So how the CPA works is the budgeting requirements goes into buckets. So the CPA revenue is divided into multiple buckets. Open space gets 10%, historic preservation 10%, community housing 10%, administration up to 5%, and the remainder into the budgeted reserve. Recreation does not have a bucket. They're funded from the undesignated reserve or the general unreserved CPA fund balance. Next slide. These are the balances as of July 1st, 2025. We had at the last town meeting, there was a lot more in the housing reserve, but we had transferred over almost $600,000. So that lowered those budgets. And the CPA fund balance, it's unknown. Freddie, do you want to touch on why that's unknown?
Yes, our town accountant needs to tie out the books after year end, and until she does that, because there's other things in the buckets, it's just what we put into them at the annual town meeting. the CPA fund balance has other, you know, return on investment and other tax needs and things like that that go into it. So she can't give us just a set number. It doesn't carry forward like the other ones. So she'll be giving that to the committee before you start processing your applications in the fall.
Thank you. The next slide, I think, is really important, as we talk about. So the local surcharges to date have been $6,186,869. The state match during that time was almost $2.5 million. So, you know, the state match varies on a year-to-year basis based on the number of communities that come in. But if you just look at the surcharge of the state match, that's a pretty high average. That's almost 39%. In November 24, received in 18%. I can't think of another fund that you can get an 18 or up to a 39% return. So there is great value in CPA and you know what we do and the groups that are able to benefit from it. So next screen. These are examples of just some projects that were completed. The Fayetteville Playground Tennis Court, excuse me, and basketball courts, the restoration of the old burial ground, preservation of historic records in the town clerk's office, funding the Affordable Housing Trust, which I had mentioned earlier, preservation of Chestnut Hill Farm, restoration of South Union, phase 1 and phase 2. And again, I'm just touching on a few of these. Grant, can you flip the screen again? Thank you. Application fees to add the South Union School to the National Register of Historic Places, the library restoration, lights at Mooney Field and Neary Tennis Courts, All Wars Memorial, South Union School Playground, Townhouse restoration that was done, and trails through the Peninsula Trail. So those are some of the completed projects that the monies that have been paid in have benefited the town in a great way. So the next slide talks a little bit about the application process. You'll be able to obtain an application from the townhouse as well as through the community preservation page on the town website. Like I said, those will be updated at the latest. The applications will be open on Monday. We are reviewing some final changes. So if we even make changes, I want there to be time for it to get done. We not have to rush to do that. Also, we have a CPC handbook for further details on project eligibility and the process, and that as well will be available with the application on the town's website. If you're interested in understanding project funding criteria as defined in the application and the CPA legislation, it's under Chapter 44B. You can get that through the state website. We'll also put this PowerPoint presentation on the website as well. So if anybody missed it and is watching the meeting but would like to have it, it'll be available as well. And then complete and submit the application by September 15th deadline. Plan on presenting to the CPC somewhere in September and October. Attend CPC meetings when applications are reviewed to answer any project related questions and answer any project related questions at town meeting. So that's kind of the timeline. The next few slides are I just want to highlight on some of the items that are on the application. Obviously, most importantly is the funding request, the total cost of the project, but you need to select one of these categories that it fits into: open space, historic preservation, recreation, or community housing. Next page. I'm sorry, go ahead, Freddie.
It could also be mixed. You could have a open space recreation project. So you have to select one, but you could have more than one.
Yeah, it says check all that apply. Thank you. On the next page, and again, all of these are in the application. One of the most important things is the eligibility. It defines how the project meets CPA requirements. And there's a chart in the application as well. And the chart will come up on the next page. If we could just flip to that quick, Grant. So when you're looking to submit an application, the only projects that receive yeses in these boxes are eligible. So for open space, you're looking to acquire, create, preserve, or rehabilitate if it was acquired or created with CPA funds. Historic, you can't create, obviously, a historic building or a historic project. So you could acquire historic, preserve historic, or rehab, recreation, and so on. I don't know that I need to go through all of them. They're there on the screen. But housing as well, they can acquire, create, preserve, support, or rehabilitate or restore. In July 8th of 2012 legislation prohibited the use of CPA funds for artificial turf fields. There's been a lot of back and forth about that, and some towns have done it, some towns haven't done it, and trying to understand, but the legislation does say it's pretty specific and on what you can and can't do. So next page. So while all your budget and your timelines and everything are important, the funding is a very important piece because we want to know what funding sources are available, committed, or under consideration, including commitment letters, in-kind donations, volunteer hours, or even fundraising that could potentially be done on a project. So again, just highlighting some of the things on this. If we go to the next one. And we found maintenance is very important. If there's going to be ongoing maintenance on a project, I don't think, Fetty, we've had that happen just yet, have we?
Right.
Where there was maintenance, ongoing maintenance on a project? Maybe I'm wrong, but
We don't. The CPC wants to know what your plans are. The
Correct.
CPA cannot fund maintenance,
correct.
but if you're getting well, first of all, like for historical, every historical project is because of delayed maintenance that you have to do restoration, right? So ongoing, it makes no sense to restore a building and then have no plan to do the ongoing maintenance with any project. So you want to make sure that the applicant has a plan in place moving forward, who's going to take care of building or the asset or whatever resource it is that you're funding, so that you're not 5 years, 10 years down the road, coming back looking for more CPA money to take care of the asset that you just restored or purchased.
Perfect, thank you. Next slide. So all town meeting approved projects must submit a project schedule and proposed payment timeline. This schedule will be used to determine project completion deadlines. And we'll be discussing this as we go through the ongoing process with the application up to the committee voting to support or not support the article going forward to town meeting. Next slide. This is one of the very important screens that we have. So if you have a historical project coming forward, please make sure that you view this chart. So if your project is the project appropriating CPA funds for building, structured vessel, real property, document, or artifact? If it's yes, then you come down the chart. One of the things that we found is the resource on the State Historic Register. If it's not, this is key. The second block text box on your right, you have to have the local historical commission has to make a determination that the resource is significant in the history, archaeology, architecture, or culture of our town. And if they do, then it's eligible for CPA. And if they don't, it's done at that point. And these are things that should be done as you're putting your application in. You should be having that conversation if it's a historical project with the historical commission. So reaching out to the chair, we have the chair, Kevin Miller, here tonight. Welcome, Kevin. Reaching out and just starting this process. So we don't go all the way through, get to the end and say, this step wasn't done. So it's a very important step for any historic projects. So I just wanted to highlight that. And this screen this is also in the handbook and it's also in the application at the end as well. And next are just some pictures of some of the projects funded by CPA in Southburn. We have the historic preservation of the South Union School, which is great. We have the South Union School designation, National Register of Historic Places. Again, wonderful. The South Union School playground, which is very, very well utilized on the south side of town. At any given time, there are families, their kinder group goes there. It's been a great addition as well. And again, the next is just another picture of the playground. Importantly, the restoration work at the library that was done. The next 3 slides are just of that. And it's fully restored, which was just an amazing asset. Next are the Mooney Field lights, which a lot of families have benefited from that being done. The Neary tennis court lights as well. One of the ones most people are aware of that the Community Preservation Act supported was Chestnut Hill Farm. Many people have used the wonderful resource that is for hiking trails, farming, and whatnot. Next is the Halloran property. I'm just going to kind of fly through some of these. Preservation of 84 Main Street. The Boy Scout, there was an Eagle project on volleyball courts. Another one very well used by the citizens of the town is, next one, grant is the Bayville Playground. Lots of families know that on Central Street, that was funded through CPC. Then we have the Finn Mooney pickleball courts, which are very popular lately. And that kind of brings us to kind of the last couple slides, questions on the presentation or any ideas that anybody may have for open space, historical, community housing or recreation projects, which are on the next slide. And as well, you can always go and visit our website. You can view this slide deck, as well as, you know, we have a lot of different resources on the website, including information from the Department of Revenue, from the Community Preservation Coalition. I think there's links to the coalition's website, which can answer a lot of questions as well. So, Kevin or Deb, do we have any questions on this specifically?
We also have attendees on Zoom.
Okay, yeah, we'll ask them next, so.
Can I just throw that? I think
Sure.
it's really nice seeing those photographs,
Yeah.
actually. And I would have sat through more.
I know.
Because it's really, it just reminds you, and some of those assets I'm obviously very, very familiar with, and other ones, the pickleball courts and.
Yeah.
Then,
Then,
so it's kind of nice to see, actually. I would just, I'm not telling you what to do. I put some of that on your
website,
website, because it just reminds people that you're doing good work and that it shows up in different ways, which I think is good for people to be reminded of.
awesome, thank you, Kevin. Deb, did you have anything?
I do have a question. I came in
Sure.
right, I think, as you were showing
Sure.
the budgets, and I noticed the historical budget is a measly $2,000. And I was just wondering, what does that mean? If you're applying for something that's in historical and there's only $2,000 in the budget, then does it come out of the general fund? And why is it so low?
Well, you didn't.
Go ahead, perfect, Faye. Yep,
So we have every year a 10% of the surcharge only goes into the various, we call them buckets. And the CPC has a policy of taking the money out of that to fund the projects first, right? So if it's historical, it comes out of that. The town has major projects bonded against CPA that were CPA projects. The library, that was $1 million something. The townhouse was 2 million something, and 84 Main Street. We are still paying off those bonds every year. It's hundreds of thousands, and we take the money out of the historic budget first. So the only reason there is any money in that, there would be zero normally, but at town meeting, the committee also took, made an adjustment to, it was a prior, some funds we got that hadn't been accounted for in the regular budget from the prior year. The surcharge came in higher. Not the surcharge, the state distribution was higher than we had budgeted for, so they divvied that up into the buckets. So that was why they had 2,000. It would have been zero otherwise. The 2,484, that was their 10%. So what happens is, if you have a historic budget, there's money. If you say 10%, there's about every year you have 65%, 65% of the surcharge, plus 100% of whatever the state matches goes into the unreserved. And then maybe some other like interest or return on investment comes into that. So that's where the bulk of the money is. And that can go to any project that the CPC determines is of value to recommend to town meeting.
Thank you. I have a couple more.
go ahead.
All right, some of these are related to master plan generally, and you may know I'm the chair of the master plan implementation committee, but I'm not speaking on their behalf. But I'm interested in whether or not the CPC is doing any kind of outreach to boards and committees, because this is my second year here. I think last year we had Mr. Dennington, but he was the only select board member. I think maybe there's a couple other board members, I can't recall. But that's always hard to do. And I was just wondering if you reach out to boards and committees to find out if they have specifically master plan goals or recommendations that might be eligible for CPA funding. Or if you would do it, if you consider it.
So typically, again, Freddie, jump in if I'm going off the rails, but typically we do reach out once, if not twice a year, to all boards and committees. We ask for projects all the time, and that's one of the challenges we have, Deb, is we continually ask and then something will come up and we won't know about it. You know, we've seen it happen a few times where you know, and I think it was advisory had a plan of some capital things they were thinking that CPC could be used for, but no one shared it with us. So we continually do that. We don't specifically ask for master plan related items. We certainly can do that in our next, you know, in our next email going out. We'll be doing it, sharing the application and the guidebook as well. We certainly can ask that question. I don't think anybody would have a problem, you know, with doing that. And it goes out to all the boards and committees.
Yeah, I would say that for 20 years. Been over 20 years now, we've been having these public forums. And we have, you know, done extensive outreach over that time. And we get, this is the turnout we get every, you know, but we still, the committee still does that. And they send out emails, they send it to all the board, the chairs. There isn't, I don't believe there's one of the specific town committees or commissions, open space, recreation, historical, conservation commission, town departments that doesn't know that there is CPA funding available that we haven't reached. They know, just because they don't come to the meeting doesn't mean they're not aware of it. The committee would like them to come and has outreach to them, but you know that, what's the saying about horses and water? Can't wait for horse to water. You know, you can invite them, but.
Yeah. I mean, Freddie, it's Kristen. I can say that recreation, you know, I know Travis is on tonight, as well as I am. And our last agenda and our next agenda, we have CPC because we know that applications will be coming due. So I think it is, at least amongst the committees, well known.
Yeah, it's well done. We put them in the backpacks for the schools. I mean, we've utilized every resource we could think of to advertise these forums. And then, you know, my hope is, our hope is that someone may pique an interest in someone and they'll go back and watch it. And that's why we put all the information on the website as well. I mean, we solicit as much as we can, but typically until something comes up and somebody says, hey, we want to do this project, then they come to CPC.
Right, well, so my next question is whether or not the CPC gives priority to the master plan goals. So I've been, you know, I just like to look at other towns and see what they've got going on. I have checked out a number of CPC guidelines, and some of them do give priority to master plan goals. So I was wondering if you've thought about that.
So we haven't, and we haven't talked about it. I think for this cycle anyway, I think it's, we have a handbook that we'll be looking at again next spring. I think that's something we can certainly entertain, you know, to put in to the handbook, Deb, but I think it where the applications hopefully are opening Monday at the latest, it's kind of tough to readjust everything. And
Oh, yeah, I don't mean
going
now.
forward, it's an ongoing discussion, absolutely.
Yeah, I wanted to share with you, I attended a Mass Planners Council meeting, and we got put into these little groups, and I met this guy. He was a town manager from Situate, and we were talking, I can't remember what we were talking about, to be honest, but he was talking about that they moved the historic lighthouse in Situate. And I took the opportunity to ask him, you know, how that went.
Yeah.
So he told me that they did some fundraising and they used CPA funds. So I think it was too close to the ocean or the erosion, and they had to move it back. So he was a town manager, and I asked him if it required agreement from their select board. And he said no, because it was in the master plan to protect their historic assets. And so I thought that was interesting. I just wanted to share with you. I think that this committee has the power to make decisions on which projects you choose. I know you go through a very rigorous process, but I just want to make an appeal that I don't believe that the select board has a role in the work that you do. And I'd like to see you become a little bit more independent. But I found that example and I wanted to share it. I've been looking for other examples as well. But I liked in particular that was, you know, maybe that would, I haven't gone back and checked out Situate's CPC, you know, website or anything like that, just took his word and I followed up with him. But I liked that, his answer was quick. He's had that question before. And then it was linked to the fact that it was a master plan goal and they did not need to seek approval. That's their town policy, I guess. I know our town is different, but I would like to make the appeal that, we do have, what's called delayed maintenance, is what Freddie said. And, I think that's just a shame. We have some assets that really, you showed one of them, obviously, South Union School. And I think that I'd like to see this and recommend that this committee take action. And I don't think that we need the select board to do that. You have a lot of people, you've got the 21 Highland Future Use Committee and others that have been looking into it, the neighbors, the fact that it's sitting down there, it's in disrepair, the outside looks like sometimes in disrepair. It's a wonderful, wonderful asset. I don't think there's anyone in town that thinks that that building shouldn't have a preservation restriction. And I'd really like to see this committee reach out and see who you can speak to make it happen to save that building. The structure, I'm only talking, I know that there was other work going on to talk about the use, but just to save the structure. So I just wanted to appeal to you that I do think that there's other towns that are a little bit more flexible and don't seek the select board agreement before they go to town meeting.
Can I ask a question? Is that all right?
Yeah, go.
So in the case of the lighthouse, did the town own the lighthouse?
Ugh.
Because I think that is the big difference, because the CPC does not ask the select board to weigh in on any of their projects. The only place this came in was in the site control, which is totally different than weighing in
I
on.
know.
The advisory and the select board both review the projects and say support, no support. And we have, shouldn't say we, in the past, when I was chair, we got things through town meeting with no support from the select board or advisory, because this funding was put in place to fund the type of projects, people voted for it, types of projects that don't typically hit the budget and the town meeting approval. So this CPC had in the past always said, we support projects based on the value of the project and the goal of the act. We wanted the support of the select board and advisory, but it's not a requirement. So the two different things you're talking about, and you may want to look into if that lighthouse was actually owned by the town, because if it wasn't owned by the town, totally apples and oranges.
Yeah, thank you for that. I will look into that. I think it was, but I don't know that. Who would own the lighthouse? So I don't really know. But I would also say, in terms of site control, obviously the town has site control, right? But to me, that's totally different than who owns the public assets. We in this room, in this community, own the public assets. So I think those are two different things. Who's going to control the project and direct the facilities to do the work and all that kind of stuff. Of course, it's the select board, but which group in town owns that? The select board don't own that. So I would ask that this committee take a look at that closely. I think some towns are starting to separate that.
Okay, it's gonna be from the handbook, so.
Yeah,
Thank you.
You're right. We're gonna discuss it a little bit later.
Can I make another, Claire had something, but I want to make
I have a little
another.
bit of a different take on this. CPC, CPA funding has been around for 20 years.
Yeah.
Okay, so my take on it is if there is a board or a committee who has a possibility of being able to take advantage of these funds and they haven't brought the request forward, well, then shame on them.
Yeah.
And I have a real problem with trying to dump it over to a select board. You've been on the select board, okay? These are volunteers who are volunteered for a full-time job. I think that there's another way to look at it in terms of, and I haven't seen the latest of the implementation plan, but maybe if the people on the implementation committee took a look at it and said, well, maybe we ought to reach out to different boards or committees to say, have you thought about this? That might be another tack to take. that would be
Yes.
possible in order to get more customers? I mean, folks, this is not free money, but you know,
For good projects, a lot of good things, as we saw, have come out of use of the
exactly.
CPA funds that may not have
And to
been done in the normal budget process.
dump
Wouldn't
it
have been done.
over
Wouldn't have, yeah.
to somebody else is just, I think a lot of these volunteer boards, people are, they're doing the best they can and they're volunteers.
Claire, if I could just answer, that's the reason I was looking at some of the local towns. Northborough, for example, gets very involved as a master plan implementation committee, and they actually, you know, kind of, they have some small funding, but they do kind of try to put, you know, for example, they're very involved right now in their tercentennial and all kinds.
Understood. And then
So
maybe
they're
the
trying to make
recommendation
things happen.
should be that if Northborough is working with their master plan people, then maybe Southborough really ought to
Yeah.
do that same thing.
So I would suggest to Deb through, because we're getting ready to open the application processes now, and it's kind of hard to put the priority. But I think through this process, as we get the applications, you and the master plan implementation committee, because the applications go on the website. It'd be great to get some of your feedback as we get these applications. And, you know, to be able to say to us, hey, you know, this is in the master plan, this has been approved, and maybe you should, you know, give it extra thought process as you go through it. I mean, we would certainly welcome that, you know, through the
That's great.
process, we are certainly open to conversations and, you know, hearing feedback from people. I mean, all we want is to do what's best for the town. We're the stewards of this money. And we just need to make sure that it meets the requirements. And we've been fortunate that we haven't really had to turn down projects in the past, but I mean, at some point, you know, the criteria may change and, you know, that might have to happen.
Yeah.
But did you want to add? Right?
Yeah, and I think Claire touched on it, and Deb, maybe the way to go is for your implementation committee to go through the plan and say, these are projects within the plan, and talk to the, you know, have it not just be on you,
Yeah.
but to the committees and commissions that are involved, and to the and work with the CPC over the course of the next year.
Yeah, that's a
And
great suggestion.
Because, you know,
And-
I know for myself, I chair the Open Space Preservation Commission. I'm sitting here as a consultant, not a member of the committee. And we go through the master plan all the time. You know, it's on our agenda every single meeting, and like, are we, you know, it may not be the exact timeline, but what are we working on that's on the master plan? And is every committee doing that? You know, I don't know, but we don't have any, and we actually did bring forth a project suggestion, and it didn't go forward because we didn't have the authority to move the project forward. So that's a disappointment to us, but it's the reality. So you move on to the next thing, what you can do.
One other thing I'll add too, Deb, is we have talked about the 2 years, Grant and I have been on here anyway, I think we're like the senior people now, Grant, is, you know, we would love nothing more than to have a 5 or a 10-year plan with groups giving us an idea of things they might have coming forward in the future, because you know, it might have an impact on the decisions we make this year, knowing next year there may be something that we want to make sure, you know, we're able to do as well. So, I mean, we'll take any help in getting the word out to people that, you know, most groups do have, you know, even capital as well. I mean, there may be things that it makes our job a lot easier and more effective when we have an idea of what may or may not be coming down the path. And there's always those things that just surprise us every year and come up through the application process, which is great. You know, it's great. Somebody has a great idea and we are like happy to hear it. So
No, I'm gonna take that back to the master plan.
Please do.
Implication, I think that's great.
please do, and through the application process as well, Deb, as the applications come in. And, you know, we do our reviews, you know, we can certainly, you know, let you know, and you can take it back to, you know, to the master plan implementation committee as well. And there might be something that you guys feel very strongly about that, you know, we would certainly appreciate that feedback.
Yeah, that's awesome. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Does anybody online have a question or a comment? Nope.
Is anybody online?
Yeah, yes, there are a couple, so again, thank you very much for this forum piece, and you know, we look forward to applications, like I said, our next couple items on the agenda are to finalize the application in the handbook. And again, if there's changes, we just want to give ourselves enough time to not say they'll be up tomorrow when, you know, there are things, changes we might need to make. So we're gonna, I think it's, if the committee's in agreement, I think it's safe to say Monday. If it's sooner, great. But I think if we have the thought process of Monday,
Tomorrow's considered a holiday.
that too as well.
Friday's a half day, then it's the weekend.
Yeah.
I mean, really, is anybody looking at it before Monday?
Would hope not, but you never know.
Be realistic.
You never know, but again, too, we did a lot of work on the handbook and we did a lot of work on the
Absolutely,
application, so, I mean, I think the reviews are going to be minor changes that are left, and I just wanna, again, throw a special thanks out to Grant for being our guy on the fly with the handbook, and then Katie, you know, taking the feedback from our last meeting and, you know, revamping, so, huge kudos to you guys, you know, I think we're fortunate that we have such a great committee with such great representatives from the different groups on it. That, you know, we're definitely productive. Kevin, did you have something else you wanted to?
No, this is all really interesting. I actually just, I'm thinking of it from the historical standpoint. The master plan conversation is very interesting to me because for one thing, I'm going to be bringing the water tower project
Yeah.
to the master plan implementation committee for their endorsement. Pretty pleased, because I'm coming back with that.
Right.
So yeah, no, and it does make me think about the need. I'm just, again, taking on my share of it, that you know, we're historical, but I think we need to be more forward thinking about the projects that we might be able to foresee coming up.
Yeah.
And that get in the queue. And that water tower thing really only came across my radar because Bill Cundiff was asking me my opinion about the roof.
Yeah.
And it sort of went from there as I dug into the matter. So, you know, there's got to be a better, on our end, a better system of identifying projects going forward. So it just gives me food for thought.
Yeah. I think working together is the key, you know,
Yeah.
collaboration between all of us to get thoughts. So I'm just gonna go down the line if anybody has anything else in the committee they'd like to add. Katie, Claire, Ellen, Grant, come on, Grant, you gotta have something.
No, just want to see if anyone else has any ideas for projects, or potential thoughts. Because I think part of this is to generate ideas for, so obviously Kevin, you mentioned the water tower, but
Yeah.
Anyone on Zoom or do you have any thoughts for potential projects that might be interested or have questions about?
Or they can certainly reach out to us at any time. We're very accessible. You know, we try to at least meet once a month. I think we pretty much do that. I'm hoping maybe during the summer, you know, we can give that a little bit of a break, though I know we're gonna have to unfortunately meet in July, because that's another discussion on the agenda. Town council's going, we set a date for him to come in, so. Okay, well, as far as the forum piece goes, I thank you both for coming. You're certainly welcome to hang around for the rest of our thrilling meeting with applications and handbooks. You know, but thank you again.
Thank
Right,
you.
you wanna add something? Okay,
Take a minute break.
yep, why don't we take a 2-minute break? How's that? Just to regroup and perfect. Do you wanna keep the Zoom open? Beautiful. All right, welcome back. Next on the agenda is an update request from Trails Committee and Open Projects. So they have asked to be able to come in July. So Kat has more detailed stuff that, you know, there just wasn't time to do it. So I said I didn't think that was a problem. So that was the update on that, is that should be coming in July with a more detailed update of the various projects that are open. Next is the discussion review of the application. Grant, would you mind pulling up? Or
Yeah.
I know, I think we've gone through our edits, but Freddie had a couple more she'd like to make, and hopefully after that, we can get that.
That's the handbook, not the application.
Oh, I'm sorry,
Which one are we doing?
sorry.
You're on application.
Yeah, let's do application first. Sorry, I apologize. My mind is going 2 different directions. So let's do the application. And again, thank you to Katie for that. I don't know if everyone had the opportunity to go through it. As I skimmed through it, I thought all of the things, unless I missed something. that we had talked about, Katie had put in. Katie, the only question I did have
Mhm.
was we had talked about the spacing.
Yeah.
And being able to print. Can you just touch on that quickly?
Yeah, so I took away the scroll option because it only prints what you see in the screen, so
Okay.
it should minimize the more you type.
Okay.
But obviously there are some limits.
Is there a field limitation on it?
No,
No, okay.
no,
And I did notice that you added, I think you added, I'm just skimming through it right quick, past this, one question I did have. So, under 12, page 6, summary, brief description of the project, which we printed as the project summary. Didn't we say that could be printed as a project summary? I know that came up at the last meeting.
I'm sorry. I was
Yeah.
looking at the
Page
application.
6, yep, in the application, page 6, number 12. I just can't remember where we fell on that at the last meeting.
We said either it may be printed as a
Oh,
summary or like.
I
it
can't
will
read what it says, but
inform Project summary.
it's not will be printed. Do not write will be
Right,
printed.
well, that's what I'm saying. So-
Because they could write something stupid, sorry, not great,
So,
and we wouldn't use that.
correct, so, but we had talked about this, so Ellen, again, didn't, so we
How
said,
about this? Will be used for the summary in the warrant article. Will
Could be used.
could be, yeah, I like could be, I don't like will. I
Oh,
think we need the
could be used.
discretion,
Well-
could be. I don't wanna commit myself, because if somebody does a
Right.
horrible summary
Right,
or.
so as the person who ends up having to deal with this without anything there,
No, we want something,
right, so
we don't wanna commit,
how about,
which could
which
be,
will. Is there a way of saying that will guide? Either be used or guide the summary in the warrant article?
how about which could be used as the project summary? Thoughts?
Or which would guide the.
Guide, I
Guide the
think
summary
guide
of the warrant article. I think that
will
would-
be used or guide the project summary.
Okay, so say how you want it, because I think Katie's editing on the fly, so. Try this,
Will it show up on the screen?
no,
Oh,
no, because Katie's doing it on her
Okay.
computer.
does this sound right? Brief description of the project, which will
Use-
guide,
Which be used as a guide,
which will guide the project summary in the warrant article. I think that's good enough. It can be verbatim or not when we say guide. Is that good?
okay, I'm fine with that too.
Okay.
Okay. So for me, I think that was, I'm gonna go down the line, I think that was, the only thing I did,
Yeah, I'm gonna scroll through the application quickly.
that was like, I don't know how many changes we
Okay.
have, Grant, I don't know what's the easiest way to do,
I don't have any, I don't think, but maybe,
okay.
um,
So
Okay, so
Claire,
you
did you
see-
have any? I thought it was good. Did you have any changes?
Yeah, no,
Ellen?
I think it's good.
I have just a few. I think.
Okay, go ahead.
Yeah,
Do yours, Ellen.
Great, and thank you, Katie, for all of your work on this. So on page 2, where we have the checkbox for I've read and understand the process, we have that checkbox again at the top of page 3.
Mhm.
So I think
Okay.
we would want to delete that from page 2. And then we talked last time about moving the eligibility question up to the page with that chart. So if we can move what's now the second question 3 on eligibility to that chart and then get rid of the checkbox.
Right down. Yeah, I know that's,
Which is fine.
all right.
I think we had done a checkbox as well. That's what that was supposed to be.
So Ellen, do you want to do it? I just one more time. So you're saying take off the checkbox at the end of page 2
Yeah,
and put the eligibility question there?
yeah.
Okay,
I don't know that we need a checkbox and the eligibility.
Okay.
But that's just me. I think the goal was to have someone be able to be looking at the chart and answer the eligibility question right
Okay.
there.
Katie will take care of that.
Okay,
Next.
you. And then we talked about, well, so at the bottom of page 6. where we have additional information. I don't think we talked about this before, but this came to mind while I was reviewing it again, is we asked for the following additional information if applicable. And then under further documentation, we have site control. And I just wonder if we want to make that a little firmer, because I think the site control issue was sticky last year. It has the potential to come up again this year. So if we want to be clear that there needs to be a demonstration of site control,
You have a separate numbered item.
so as opposed to it being additional information.
So do further documentation, maybe do like a 2 then, change the 2 to, do you have site control? Is that what you're thinking?
I
of?
think just not have it say if applicable.
So, okay, so just take out that, okay.
So would somebody, and I'm out of my league on this one, but, it seems like there should be, X number, 3, 4, 5 things that are applicable for showing site control. Is that a fair assumption?
Yeah, and so I think I agree with the list here, so such as a purchase and sale agreement, option to
Yeah.
deed. I just worry that someone will say, oh, this isn't applicable.
Got it, so just take
And
if
just,
applicable out.
yes,
Got it, okay.
Well, feasibility reports are applicable, so
so maybe move the,
I have a suggestion, because I'm going to make it in your. Don't shoot me, in the handbook, that actual line item should go up with the project eligibility. At the beginning, your thinking is this project, at the very beginning, at the start, before you fill out everything else, is the project eligible? Do you have site control? So just put,
Take that, so you're suggesting take number 1,
yep,
put it up under eligibility?
where that box you just took out was,
Well, also eligibility is going in there, she said after eligibility, make it 2 or whatever it would be. That's what you're suggesting,
I'm
okay,
suggesting that before someone goes through filling out the whole thing, for those that haven't read the handbook. And they say, oops, I don't know about this, they can go and do that before. And then they think, oh, it's not
So
applicable.
is this applicable to all applicants though? Because for certain town entities, like I don't think the historical commission had to show
right,
site control in order to. put it-
Yeah, they would, of
Fully.
course you would.
So in
For
the
what?
application, so
For what?
I'm just saying, I haven't seen that in any of the applications that we've received, that somebody attaches the deed or something like that.
Because,
Even with like the fire truck, like they own the fire truck supposedly. I'm
They-
just gonna
so
assume that
here's
they
the thing.
did, but we didn't see the actual purchase that they had owned it.
here's the thing. Just because they didn't doesn't mean they shouldn't have. Just because they didn't doesn't mean you shouldn't have had that up front. What if you went through the whole application thing and found out, oh, they didn't even own it? Right? So. What projects do we do that there's not
well,
So the
ownership
historical
issues?
commission, it doesn't own the water tower.
but the,
They would get a letter of support, right? So, okay.
right, from the select board,
And there hasn't been any, DPW is in charge of the cemetery, right? And they're the ones who brought it to you. There was a level of confidence, but
right,
by right, the committee probably should have said, show that this is a project that is, whoever has control of that land or that building is in support of moving this forward.
so is everybody good with moving eligibility up? And then moving, I gotta back to it again, sorry,
Site control.
further documentation up at that point as well? Okay, okay, I'm gonna do that. Make note of that, Katie.
Yep.
What it did, okay. Okay, so go ahead, Ellen.
and then my last one was just page 7, when we have question 3 on bylaw compliance. I'm just struggling a little bit with the wording of it, of evidence that the project does not violate any zoning bylaws or any other laws or regulations.
What about if we say it's in compliance?
Yeah, I think that's,
The project is in compliance with zoning bylaws or other laws or regulations.
Yeah.
Okay. So I didn't mean to cut you off. Ellen.
No, that's exactly what I was gonna say.
Okay, sorry.
No,
I would. What other laws?
You know, you never know what you never know.
I mean, I think specifically you're looking at bylaws.
State laws.
State laws, yeah, regulations, environmental.
Right.
I think it just,
Okay.
I'm
All
okay
right.
with leaving it broad
Okay.
because it covers all bases. Okay, great. You said you didn't have anything else? Kristen, do you have anything else that you want to change on this?
No, I am good.
Okay. All right, so I'm gonna ask the committee, once these changes are made, if the committee is good with, you know, closing this out, and we'll get this up on the website, by Monday or on Monday. How's that? I don't think we need an official vote for that. Do we have anything else before we just?
No, are you voting that this is a final? You don't. need
We
a
can do
vote?
that.
I don't know if you need, you
That's
don't
fine.
need a vote.
Okay, we can do a vote, it doesn't matter. Grant, would you like to make a motion that this is the final application for fiscal year 2020?
So moved.
Second, thank
is
you.
it 7 or 6? Unanimous is 6.
Fiscal year.
7.
27.
So unanimous is 6.
Oh, no, it'll be 26.
Town meetings in 26, fiscal year 27.
7, yeah, okay. Okay,
Makes my head hurt just thinking about it.
okay, we'll have to do a roll call vote. Katie,
Aye.
Claire,
Aye.
Ellen,
Aye.
Grant.
Aye.
Kristen
I,
and Lisa, aye. Okay, perfect. So we'll get that done. Great. And now we'll bring up the handbook. Grant, I know you had some questions. Freddie had some answers for some of your questions, and then I think Freddie had some other. minor
Because I was
changes.
going through and I
Correct.
made a couple of suggestions for your review and some are just corrections. So
So is the most recent version in the,
I think that's what you sent me.
Dropbox?
I
Okay.
think that's what you sent me. I used what you sent me, Grant, so.
so I haven't made any changes, I mean, like the track changes that are in there are from our meeting 2 meetings ago. That makes sense, so I haven't made any additional track changes.
So I think the process would be to go through this and if we're okay on all of the things that you accept the track changes
Right.
and then it's good to go.
Yeah, so why don't we go through? I know we've all kind of given changes, but we'll go down the line again one more time for us in case somebody has anything else, but why don't we start with Freddie answering the questions that were outstanding,
Well,
Grant?
how about make it easier just to start with the questions or I had some changes, but
Well, we'll go back and do the changes, but I think,
okay.
whatever,
Yeah.
it doesn't really matter, Freddie.
Okay, so I need to find if someone can help me to where the,
Yeah, there was a question from. I'm gonna zip through down through here too. Well, we're gonna add the flow chart, just a separate page. So Grant, would you, as we do this, would you be willing to add the table of contents we had talked about at the last meeting?
Yes,
And then
I'll
we're
just do
gonna
it after the meeting.
afterwards, perfect. No, that's great. I just didn't know if you were willing,
Yeah, I can do that.
thank you, to do that. And I guess we're gonna add a flow chart too.
so there's 2 questions.
Yes.
On page 9. So the first one was the community housing project, any land or housing purchase with CPA funds. Must have a permanent deed restriction placed upon it, and if the property is sold, the proceeds must be returned to the CPA fund. So from Stewart, that complies with Mass General Law on procurement. So CPA and the housing trusts are exempt from some of the procurement bylaws, but they're not exempt from state law on what you do when you sell a asset. And additionally, it's in the IGA from the Attorney General's, Department of Revenue list that this is what we should do. So we should keep it in there, and if we find out more information down the road, you can deal with it, but it's only a specific incident when it's with the housing monies that this comes to play right now. I think. I don't know any other situation where we buy something and then it gets sold. But we could look into it further, but from everything I found out from Stewart and then reading the Department of Revenues,
The disposition, and I did put that in the Dropbox as well, the language for the.
it's clear
disposition.
that this is what is legally required from the understanding of the, and for everyone who doesn't know, Stewart is the executive director of the Community Preservation Coalition. He is not a lawyer. He doesn't provide legal advice, but he shared the section that it's in. And I don't know, I didn't print that out, so.
So essentially, I think I have a comment on, if I'm on the right sentence, that says double check this, so it has been double checked.
What?
Yes,
Okay.
Yes,
triple check.
triple check. Okay,
So, I mean, there may be more information down the road, but, you know, I don't think it's something we need to worry about right now. And then the next one was to check with Stewart on the property owner permission. And I did. And his response was that the CPC is given great authority on how they review projects. There's no law saying you have to have site control. However, he recommended that most CPCs do require it. It would be a complete, I think he used the term once when we were talking of common sense. Why would you go through the whole process of reviewing a project that can't move forward? Your bids, once a project is funded, if town meeting were to approve it, you can't get a bid without the select board signing off. You can't dispose of property, all of those things. And this isn't just the select board, whoever is the owner of the property. And it gets to the point, are you opening yourself up where I don't like the way my neighbor's house looks, so I'm going to put in a CPA application to fix that property? Okay, that's absurd, but it's the same difference if you don't have control of the asset. How do you ask town meeting to support it? And then it becomes a battle after town meeting supports it, saying, well, town meeting wants it, but you don't want to let us do it if it were say the select board. Is that a position the CPC wants to put themselves in? And if somebody or a community group was that committed to getting a project done that maybe didn't have select board support, there's other ways to move the needle. Citizens petitions. So everything from Stewart was that it's good practice to have site control, and most CPCs put that in. But it's a vote of the committee. It's not written in law anywhere. Did I cover that well enough?
So I have a couple questions.
Sure.
Number one, being the new kid on the block here, who's Stewart?
Oh, I already just said that. He's the executive director of the Community Preservation Coalition. We pay dues to them. They're the experts on community
Is
preservation.
this at the state level?
It's a nonprofit
Yeah,
organization made up of representatives of all of the interest groups for,
okay, so what he says is consistent with state regulation?
again, he's not a lawyer. When he provides information, when we ask him, he has never, to my knowledge, steered us
And we're
wrong.
paying him?
We pay dues to the organization. They provide us information. Now that you're on, you'll be getting newsletters from them. They lobby to keep the state match.
So then the next question that I have is, what in 2.4, the first 2.4, not the second 2.4. Okay. The first one is, why would an applicant who is, since we've just gone over the whole thing of ownership.
Yeah.
Why would an applicant be able to seek CPA funds if they're not an owner?
Because they thought it was a good project. And that the town should be able to vote, the townspeople should be
So
able to
who
vote
came
on
up with this idea?
the site.
I mean, I'm just trying to look at it from in a way, it's kind of a good thing. It's the new kid on the block. I'm looking at this and I'm saying, why would that even be in there?
It was in our original application,
So,
so we have dug into it. Why wouldn't you want it in there?
so I live in a house. And I just say, my neighbor next door, the house is, I don't know, what can we say, 100 years old, whatever, just to suppose, okay? And I say, well, I know they're probably gonna sell it because she's 90 and she's not gonna be around forever, okay? And then so I applied for funding.
Well, see, that's where the question on this came from. So if you read the language we have in the handbook now, it basically says you have to have site, there has to be site control, or the owner of the property, you have to receive permission for the property. So,
Okay.
so that's what this is. And there was a question on whether, and Grant, I think you had the question, so I'm gonna just let you speak to.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
just the context, I think we
Yeah.
can give a real example. We had 2 applications last year. The applicant was here tonight, or former applicant was here tonight, who doesn't own a town asset, but wanted to see improvement made to a town asset. The select board is.
That to me
technically the
makes
owner.
sense.
So the
'Cause-
question was, can they petition the CPA for funding? Can the CPA recommend funding to town meeting? And can town meeting grant the funding without the applicant actually owning it? So that was what we had last.
Right, without the select board saying, that they're in support of it because, they control the asset, so to speak.
So I see it mainly in public context, like I see a distinction between public and private. And I've spoken about this, previously, but I agree, if I want to see somebody else's house improved or something, that wouldn't make sense. I'm fine with the language as it is in the book right
Even,
now, but I think it's something I'd like to explore further
Right.
about public assets and
even if,
citizens.
and then I'll just drop this one, cause. We're not gonna get this one solved
Well,
tonight.
we're gonna leave it, Claire, in as
Okay.
it's written in there, so you
Okay.
have to have site control or you can't do. Your application is off the table.
Okay, so then what happens to the next 2.4?
So that's not going, before we move on,
It will be renumbered, that's the answer.
things will be renumbered, but that's, before you move on. Is this resolved?
For now, I think Grant
Our
said that,
grant you,
For now,
for now.
yeah,
He
Okay,
wants to
so
further.
we're going to, so my suggestion. I'd like to start at the beginning
Oh, so that's all the questions.
for that. Those are the only 2 questions.
Those are the only
on-
2 questions, Grant, we had left open for you, correct? Because we did the 3-phase.
yeah, let me just.
Okay. Yeah, just make sure, and then we'll go, and Freddie will give her suggestions, and then.
So starting right where we were, in line with what I recommended for the application. This falls in a very odd, not odd, but it. To me, it was odd. Where it fell way down on page 9, when it's actually something that if you don't have site control, it's something that the CPC will be looking at and saying your project's not eligible. So I suggest moving it back up
To where,
to 2.2. It says determining project funding eligibility. That's on page 4.
okay,
And I suggest putting it in right under 2.2, and it says state requirements, right? And that could be bolded and underlined. And I'm suggesting the title is property owner permission. I think we should call it site control. That's what it's typically referenced to as. That's up for you to decide, and if you wanted to move it, but those are my 2 recommendations.
so it would still be under 2.2, it's just adding those 2 paragraphs, moving it up.
Moving it up, but it would have site control bolded out, like a header. Or a bullet point under 2.2. One would be state requirements. Right? Bolded. Go to 2.2.
That's not, okay, We don't bold anything else though, Freddie, that's why unless it's its own.
Well, you have bullet points then, do it bullet.
So
points.
two
Or
point two
just
is,
do,
2.2 is so long. Do you know where you want it?
go to 2.2.
Not 2.2.1 for
Okay.
it, granted, it's just two
2.2,
paragraphs
there you go.
only,
Okay.
right there.
Determining project funding.
Eligibility, right? So before it says the CPC will take a vote to determine the project eligibility, stick this in there.
Underneath in a separate paragraph.
Above that, the CPC. Above that, under state requirements. So it doesn't need bolded, you know, whatever, you know, you can do it, but I would call it site plan,
I actually like, I
site
think I like
control.
property owner permission. I think that it's more, well, I think that makes more sense to me, but you said that we can call it.
Well,
Either one.
typically, you can, you prefer, I mean, it's up to you,
Yeah.
it's your handbook. Typically, it's called site control.
go with that.
You know, do you have control of the,
Is everybody good moving that up?
but stay with property owner if you like it.
If we move that up,
I can't even. Does anyone know the section number of site control? I can't find it.
That it was before.
yeah,
The original is on page,
yeah,
page 9.
Yeah.
2.4,
it was the first 2.4 grant. So it won't have to
Oh,
be renumbered
okay.
now.
it will still have to be renumbered,
Why?
because there was another 2.4.
I know, but if you're taking this out, then the other 2.4 will become 2.4.
No, you have a disposition, 2.4, and then you have,
Was 2.3.
that, can I go through this first before?
Yeah.
So-
So above it, Clint. Alright, versus.
The other area, go to page,
But wait, before you go, is that what you want it to look like?
no,
I
it
just
doesn't
copy and
need,
pasted it.
it doesn't need a 2.21, it's 2.2.
Or it just becomes part of that. Give it, I get it,
But
Because
that's what it will
there's-
look like with track changes.
without, and it won't have a number.
Can't you just do it? No one says you can't do it because you didn't do it before. Just say, make the state requirements.
I don't have a preference. I just want to know what you want.
I just think you want both of, the reason I'm being persnickety here is I think you want both those two paragraphs above the CPC will take a vote determining, making it clear that that's part of your eligibility.
So what if we just delete property owner permission?
Okay.
And then all of that's part of.
Yeah,
Okay,
that's good.
perfect, thank
Okay.
you, Ellen.
Next, Freddie.
So the next is when we get to the. Sure, it is this one. Open space,
Page,
I'm on
Sure.
page 6.
Okay.
At the
Thank you.
top, the applicant will be expected to present the application,
yeah, it's currently red.
make that for, not from in the second paragraph. Second line, to seek a vote of support for the project.
Oh,
Yes.
instead of from the project.
Yeah, we're not asking the project to
Okay.
give support, and
That makes sense.
that will be the same for all of those. So then the next one is historic. Somehow that language didn't get put in there. So I cut and paste that open space language.
It's
Yeah.
already, it was already in there. That's why. It requires all,
Where,
by a vote, it requires a vote of the historical commission. It's different language because it requires it.
no, there's two separate steps, 2 votes for historic. Historical, so for a project to move forward, it has to have that vote of the historical commission. And then the CPC also wants to know if the historical commission supports the project, just like they do on every other one, because it could be a historic asset, but they may not support the project. Right? So. And I was suggesting that where it says the CPA requires all the historical preservation properties. At the end of that sentence. By a vote of the Southborough Historical Commission, add a new sentence. This should be done prior to submitting the application.
So in the next paragraph down, Grant.
I don't know if I agree with that. We don't necessarily do that with other entities. I think that can happen with that throughout the process, no?
No. The reason why is because last year, there was a project that the committee reviewed throughout for months.
That wasn't a vote.
And then they found out at the end that the historical commission never had voted on it. Why would you waste your time? For the required, not the support. I'm having trouble reading that. So
So
We're-
I'll just say from historical's perspective, we oftentimes review the CPA application. So if the CPA application hasn't been submitted because it isn't ready yet, how are we supposed to review it?
it's not on you, it's on the applicant. If the applicant is submitting an application, they need to know if it's eligible before they submit it, right? You don't waste the CPC's time reviewing an application that's not historical. If it's not on the state register, or you have to take the vote, one of the two things has to happen.
But we don't require that for any of the other.
It's the only one that's legally required to have that
I
vote.
understand that for the historical commission. I get that. I just don't. I think the application process is hard enough for applicants as it is to try to get all their ducks in a row, and you're trying to essentially disqualify applications who don't get a vote of historical by September 15th. Who knows, the historical even, we have
Well, I
a light
wasn't
meeting schedule over the summer, so. I don't see
You
a
can-
problem with, we're gonna be reviewing the applications. I don't see a problem with getting the vote for our final application review deadline of December, whatever we show.
Because you're saying your application says that you are going to be saying which projects are disqualified by October. What date? So that's the date, I'm not saying this committee has never, ever been, you have to do this, you can't do that. But because of that, there's been a lot of say wiggle room that you could tighten up, that the applicant should know that they need to get this. And it's not putting pressure on.
Is it being in the chart enough? Because we have the chart, don't we? I'm just asking, and I understand,
But I guess I'm just struggling with, how is the legal vote that historical has to take is that the application, the project is historical.
Right.
So the significance of the town, if it's still in the early phases and the project doesn't technically exist, the application hasn't been submitted yet, how can we do that?
In the early phases, if the first vote isn't about
We
the
don't
application,
need- we need to take a vote on the application.
No. it's on the resource. Read the language. It's not the project, is the resource.
but I think
On the
what-
state register.
I think what Grant's saying is we're saying they have to take a vote, but you won't know there's a project till after they submit the application.
Yeah.
So,
And also, even if we hear, rumblings that
Right.
there's gonna be a project, we won't get all the details until it comes before the CPA when they,
So
sorry, CPC when they.
you're
reply.
putting your application together, right? I think we're not seeing it the way I'm not describing it the way the flow. You're putting your application together. You put a budget together. It's a historical project. Is the building you're trying to restore, is the fire truck you're trying to restore, does it meet the criteria to get CPA funding?
I
If it-
agree with Freddie. I mean, it's that simple, just right there, Freddie, not to interrupt, but it's just that. It's trying, and they might not get it right, but it's saving us a little legwork that, we've had recent applications where clearly there had been changes to the property that made it illegible or ineligible, I should say. But we had to go through meeting after meeting after meeting. Some of that onus should be put on the applicant. They may not get it right, but I agree, like, they should be able to do enough research to say, yes, like, I do believe based on what we're looking at in the guidelines, this is eligible, and the historical commission agrees.
so let me just throw this out there. So again, so I have an application, the historical commission, like most committees, isn't meeting much over the summer. So does that mean I can't submit my application?
Well, you don't
I
have,
would be more comfortable, just let me finish, Freddie. I would be more comfortable if we're gonna add language along those lines to have it be by October. So they can submit their application, and that gives them 2 weeks to a month to be able to get what they need while we're in the review process.
I totally agree. I just threw that in there that not as a defined, but through your discussion and consideration, that to let the applicant know that this needs to be done on the front end. So not after you've gone through months of review and then you find out, you know,
I think that
Oops.
makes sense. I just don't think it makes sense before the application
Right.
is submitted.
So
I
maybe
think we have didn't we come up with an eligibility determination deadline? Of the
October.
first or second week of October.
So why don't we just
So it
use
should be
that?
by then, so that way you at least have a 3-week window for historical.
Right,
It's still not great for historical, to be honest with you, because we know that the applications aren't gonna come in
well, here's the,
until September 15th itself, but hey, at least we have a 3-week window to review them and determine their
can I make
eligibility,
a,
whereas before that, we won't even.
It's
have
the
that.
asset?
Right, so that I think it doesn't, you don't necessarily need to review the application. I think the question is not whether the roof replacement on the water tower is a historical project. Is the water tower a historical asset? And so historical doesn't need the details of the application to be able to take that vote. It's just the determination.
I'll just
It
say,
is
based
or
on
it
my
isn't.
experience, we oftentimes review the CPA application to determine the eligibility as well as any other supporting documentation. But oftentimes the CPA applications are well done. And we rely on them as a single point, not single, but as a central point of reference to determine whether or not, whether or not it's eligible,
so Grant, what about putting something in that by October 15th? Are you comfortable with that? The application's coming September 15th and that historical will determine eligibility by October 15th.
I think
Are you
if
comfortable with that?
October
Like, does
15th
that-
matches the deadline that we talked about previously.
Okay, does that satisfy?
Because that's really when we need to determine it by, right? We're gonna be determining eligibility on that day, we said.
Yeah.
And that's really what we need to know, I think,
Okay,
and that gives us a few weeks to review the application.
Okay.
The goal is to
Wouldn't
have
they
the
do that?
applicant talk to you and what,
No, yeah, I get that,
well ahead of time.
so
And,
can
but we
we
know
add
in our
that in?
experience that hasn't happened, right? Because people throw in their application at the last minute.
and that's what you're trying to change with this handbook,
Yeah.
right? So that they're thinking about it, like ideally, so like.
The reason I was worried is that because I think that you'd be disqualifying potentially eligible historical projects by having a stricter requirement that they have to do something before they submit the application that nobody else does. That's why
Something Stuart said to me, Mike, this is your handbook. This is not a bylaw. You get to say, and I shouldn't be saying this when you've worked all this time on the handbook, but you get to say, okay, you don't have it yet, but now, you need to get it quickly. If for some reason they didn't have it by October. Do you know what I'm saying? This is not a bylaw. This is your handbook and its guidelines, and you get to determine how but it's really to let the applicant know what's expected.
So can we just add that? So,
So we said first week in October previously, I think, for determining project
so
eligibility.
let's be consistent and do that, okay?
Okay.
Again,
Next,
So, sorry, just really quickly, I think that should go before the applicant will be expected to present the application to the historical commission.
correct.
Because that one.
okay,
That's where I have it. That can be a separate vote at another time.
okay,
Okay.
So then we're going down to I don't know what this is, recreation eligibility.
and you were just gonna, is that the one you're gonna change to for and from?
Yeah.
Okay,
And then we get to 2.4. Disposition. That's 2.4 on page 9. Property owner permission is gone now,
right,
and you have a 2.4 for applicants with existing projects.
correct.
Wait, sorry, I don't see a 2.9.
I'm sorry, on page
I don't
9,
see
Grant.
it. I think we blew by 2.4.
No, so Grant, we moved up, there was two 2.4s, and we moved the property owner permission up So Freddie, correct me if I'm wrong, now you're saying 2.4 is actually applicants with existing projects as it should actually say, so. if you-
No, 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 no.
Okay.
2.4 on my sheet says disposition.
I don't have that.
Okay, in the case of, sorry, I'm sorry. I didn't say this, I mentioned it. In the case of a community housing project, is that here?
I don't see it.
That's
Oh,
two
go ahead,
point,
right there.
2 point some, yeah. whatever,
that's-
2.3.
That's,
I did mention this to Lisa. It needs that needs its own number.
Right.
And calling it disposition. Because it doesn't fit under the, if you're doing a table of contents, right? How are you gonna look up that in the future?
Okay.
If you see what it's under 2.3. It's really about
So it's
other
under the
things,
so you wanna make that 2.4, and then again, we'd have to renumber, correct?
right?
2.4, and what's the header?
Disposition. And again, just tell me to
Right.
shut up and.
2.4 is disposition, and it says in the case of community housing project, any land.
Okay.
That's what we double, triple checked. And then you have 2.4 applicants with existing project becomes 2.5.
Yep.
And then that throws everything else off, Grant,
Yep.
sorry.
Fine.
But that was all I had.
Okay, we'll go down the line and see if anybody else has anything, Katie?
Yep.
Blair?
So the second 2.4 becomes 2.5.
Correct.
Okay, so don't we want to make that 2.5?
I think
I'm gonna do a table. Of
He's gonna do a
contents,
table
just
of
gonna
contents.
Renumber everything,
he'll read through everything then.
hopefully correctly.
But isn't it automatically renumbering it?
When I do a table, right now it's not, so,
Oh, okay.
yeah, I don't know why, but. it's not.
Okay.
So did you have anything else, Clint?
I just, no.
Okay. I like that answer. Ellen? Yeah. Okay, Grant?
Nothing, well, I don't think there's anything substantive. I have a lot of track changes that we discussed previously.
And I think I'm fine with accepting the track changes that we've made. I don't know if everyone else, we'll take a vote on that, Grant. Kristen,
Okay.
did you have anything else or are you good?
No, I'm good.
Okay, so,
Actually, just two quick things.
Sure, go ahead.
We resolved this whole thing about the anti-aid amendment 3-part. test,
Correct.
right? Okay,
yes,
and then,
I gave you the case law on that.
did we determine whether or not we wanted it to be project funding versus grant funding? Because that would be a search and replace.
I would leave it as project until Jay comes in. Grant's the funny word, not your name, Grant, but sorry. I don't mean you're funny,
Yeah.
but you know what I mean? I think it's one of those words that if we have to go back after we need to, that's such a minor change, changing it
Okay.
from project to grant.
So,
That's just my opinion
okay, so I haven't replaced all this, so I'll replace all the grant language to project.
for now. Is everybody
Right.
good with that?
And then one other one that we didn't do. Oh, wait, sorry, I think we. Oh. We mixed, sometimes we have dates for deadlines and sometimes we have weeks, and I think we determined that we liked a hard date better.
Yeah.
So I was just looking, I think we said this in a couple different ways, but we actually said. By October 10th, but then earlier, I think we said by the first week in October. And I think we did that a couple times, like
Yeah,
by the mid-September versus by
Yeah,
September 15th.
exactly.
So we prefer dates.
I like the October 10th.
Okay.
Yeah, because people get confused on
Yeah.
which week is it?
Right, so,
So let me just, so we'll take a vote to determine,
oh, yeah, got it right there.
I think there was one for September too.
And Grant, I'm gonna thank you again for doing this and adding the table of contents.
Sure.
Very much appreciated by all of us.
Okay, actually, another first week in October that we just added. This, so the whole thing about historical should be also by October 10th, right?
Yes,
Okay. And then. I think there was. September 15th, September 15th. First. I think that's it.
All right, so, do I have a motion to approve the final handbook for fiscal year 2027, as edited tonight, including adding a table of contents?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Perfect. I'll do a roll call vote on this. Katie,
I.
Claire,
No,
Ellen,
Yes.
Grant,
Yes.
Kristen,
Yes.
and Lucy Mills. Okay. Okay. So next up is just open projects, and there's really nothing on that. We talked about signage a little bit at the last meeting. But I think again, refresh my memory. I thought we were just gonna look into it a little bit more and because I mentioned to Freddie, I think, it was great that you guys gave us the diversity of signs, and I'm thinking we have ongoing projects right now. We've got the golf course, we've got the trails. We should really think about getting some signs, some of the bigger signs up there. So, again, if you guys, I don't know if you want to explore a little bit more, and it's up to you guys.
So in terms of the type of sign, what are you thinking? So I
Also
already
lawn
mentioned
signs.
lawn signs.
Historically, we use lawn signs for ongoing projects because they go in and they go up.
Okay, I thought that it was a bigger sign. No, I thought the signs that you gave us, I could be wrong.
There was a
What-
mix. Some of them were like, sorry,
Yeah,
like more of like a banner that you would tie
Right,
to a fence.
exactly.
So. I don't
Hey,
know.
the bigger the better.
Well, that's what I was thinking. So I mean, I think you gave us some,
Something is better than nothing.
Yeah, I mean, so I don't think historical obviously doesn't do that type of sign, so
Yeah.
I can look into like pricing that type of.
that would be great. Then we'll put it on the agenda for the next meeting.
Okay.
So,
So, and the other thing about pricing, it's in the project budgets that are open project.
Yeah.
No, sorry. The open projects. Permanent signage is in their budget. I don't think that would be something that the CPC would fund. The signs, I think. Because they're not for a project that you will move them around is,
Yeah,
we used to store them somewhere. I forget
yeah,
where.
we can find room for them. So that would be great.
yeah.
For the next meeting. So, we talked to Attorney Talman today, and he's having surgery, so we're trying to get him in before his knee surgery. Otherwise, we have to wait till later in September, and I thought it'd be great. We talked about wanting the discussion on grant agreements, letters of expectation, whatever we want to use. He has July 16th, which is a Wednesday, or July 17th, which is a Thursday. So if we could check our availability. I know it's summer, but I thought we really want to get this taken care of before we
what did you
start.
say, the 15th and the
I'm sorry, the 16th and the 17th
Oh,
of July, Claire.
I was by then, sorry.
No, you're good.
Yeah, either one works.
Either one,
Either one.
either one, Grant?
Yeah.
Ellen? Okay, no, you're fine. Kristen, do you have a preference?
No,
Wednesday or- Okay. I don't either, so Ellen, we'll leave it up to you.
Both of those should be fine.
Okay, so does anybody have a preference for either day?
With Wednesdays.
Let's stick with Wednesday. Okay, I will email Jay tonight and let him know that we're gonna go for the 16th. We'll do, do you guys want to do 6:30 or 7? Is 7 easier, Ellen, with summer and kids and life and
Yeah, if people don't mind 7.
I'm fine with that. Okay. We'll do 7. So what we'll have on the agenda for that meeting is we'll talk about that. Trails will be coming in for an update. I'm going to invite the library, the townhouse. John Parent will probably come in. We want to know where they stand on the PRs on those. So that's kind of some of the things. Is there anything else that somebody would like to add on an agenda to, on the agenda for a discussion? Or, I mean, you could wait till September if somebody has something, but.
I have one item just on the heels of last night's select board meeting.
Sure.
During their goal setting, they, aligned select board members to different goals. Al was aligned to a specific goal. I can't state exactly what it was, but it was in regards to the future of CPA funding. So I think we just need to address that and how we're going to work with him and whomever else is going to be looking at this. So again, food for thought this time around, but I think it should be an agenda topic when we meet next. So we're organizing with the board in terms of what that goal is and how we will assist in them meeting it.
So would you suggest, Kristen, that we invite him to come and talk about what that goal is and what the intent of that goal is?
Yeah, I think that's an excellent
Okay.
idea.
Okay, that's fine. Everybody good with that?
I found our conversation earlier about master plan kind of
Yeah,
outreach to committees interesting. I know that we're supposed to be doing a 5-year CPA plan, which we haven't done.
Okay.
It's not gonna happen in July, but maybe we could start talking about that or start talking about how we can increase our outreach, because I feel like we haven't done a ton of that since we've been on here. Maybe I'm wrong.
okay,
Like I know that we advertise our forum and stuff like that, but I don't know, maybe talking about like liaisons to committees or something, to
Okay.
kind of solicit applications. I think that might be a good time to do it, especially,
Okay.
ahead of the September deadline.
okay. So I'll do an outreach, potential 5-year plan. That's
Something
fine.
like that, I think would be
Sure.
an interesting conversation.
Okay, Freddie, did you have anything you wanted me to add?
No, hallelujah.
Okay, yeah,
You
so,
don't know how often, I push for that 5
and just one last thing, has the Dropbox been working for everybody? Okay, okay, so that's good. We'll continue that. And we set our next meeting. We'll have minutes at the next meeting. And we've already set the date, so. Do we have a motion to adjourn?
I thought the next meeting was gonna be,
It is July 16th, so,
16th.
right, so we've already set that, so we don't need to set any after that yet. Talk about it that night. So we have a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
We have a second.
Second.
Okay, roll call. Katie.
Yes.
Claire.
Aye.
Ellen.
Yes.
Grant.
Hi.
Kristen.
Yes.
And Lisa. Aye. Awesome, guys. Thank you so much.
Enjoy the beginning of summer, everyone.
Absolutely.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Like.
And that's that.